In late 1806, after their devastating defeat at Jena, the Prussian army was largely destroyed, with only a few units retreating to Poland. With Prussia out of the war, Russia stood alone against Napoleon. By mid-November, French forces advanced confidently, and Napoleon arrived in Warsaw, which had been under Prussian control since the partitions of Poland. Napoleon aimed to defeat the Russian First Army under General Bennigsen in December, but heavy Polish mud slowed the French advance, allowing the Russians to retreat. Exhausted and demoralized, French soldiers faced harsh winter conditions, leading to widespread desertions as they were ordered into winter quarter. Bennigsen, now in command of the Russian forces, planned to attack an isolated French corps, but abandoned the idea when he realized Napoleon was maneuvering to trap him. Bennigsen continued retreating, fighting the French on February 3rd before pulling back to Eylau. On February 7th to 8th 1807, Bennigsen's army fought the French at the Battle of Eylau, where both sides suffered heavy losses, around 25,000 men each. A snowstorm made the battle chaotic. The battle was brutal, indecisive, and marked the first time Napoleon failed to secure a clear victory. After the brutal Battle of Eylau, both armies needed time to recover. Meanwhile, Marshal Lefebvre's newly formed French 10th Corps besieged Danzig. After heavy bombardments and infantry assaults, the Prussian garrison surrendered on May 27th. With 190,000 French troops against 115,000 Prusso-Russian forces, Bennigsen made the first move, launching a surprise attack on Ney's 6th Corps on June 5th. Ney skillfully withdrew, and Bennigsen retreated again. Napoleon, learning that the Russians were stationed in Heilsberg by the Elbe River, launched a general assault, believing he was targeting the Russian rearguard. However, the French forces encountered the full strength of the Russian army. Despite repeated French attacks, the Russians, protected by strong earthworks, held their ground. French casualties reached 10,000, while the Russians lost around 6,000. The Russians withdrew, and Napoleon resumed his pursuit. As the French advanced toward Heilsberg for supplies, Marshal Lannes' vanguard spotted Russian forces at Friedland on June 13th. Bennigsen planned to cross the Elbe River the next day, believing he could engage Lannes' isolated units and retreat without encountering Napoleon's main army. Marshal Lannes, with a mere 16,000 men, found himself severely outnumbered by 46,000 Russians. Without hesitation, he sent an urgent dispatch to Napoleon, warning of the impending attack. Ever the tactician, Lannes skillfully delayed the Russian advance, deploying skirmishers and retreating in stages to mask the true weakness of his forces. As night settled in, Russian engineers hastily constructed pontoon bridges at Friedland to speed their troop movements. However, their commander, General Bennigsen, took a perilous gamble, positioning his forces with their backs to the river, divided by the Mill Stream. French reinforcements began arriving under cover of darkness. By dawn on the 14th of June, nearly 50,000 Russians had crossed the Eylau River. Bennigsen, aiming to outflank the French, ordered an attack on the village of Heinrichsdorf. But the French cavalry swiftly intercepted and repelled the Russian forces. At the same time, Marshal Mortier's 8th Corps reinforced the French centre, while General Audinot's grenadiers clashed with Bagration's Russian advance guard in Sortlackwood, though eventually forced to withdraw. As the day grew hotter, at noon Napoleon arrived on the battlefield, bringing with him General Victor's 1st Corps, Ney's 6th Corps, and the Imperial Guard. Surveying Bennigsen's precarious position, the emperor wasted no time in preparing for a full-scale assault. Bennigsen, in poor health, and now fully aware of the immense strength of Napoleon's forces, ordered a retreat. But it was too late. At 5:30 in the afternoon, Napoleon unleashed his attack. Ney's men cleared Sortlack-Wood, only to face fierce resistance from Russian artillery and a cavalry counterattack. Yet, General Victor's artillery soon silenced the Russian guns with a deadly bombardment, forcing Bagration's troops into retreat. By 7 o'clock, the Russian Imperial Guard made a desperate counterattack, but was overwhelmed and outnumbered. Meanwhile, fires broke out in Friedland as French forces encircled the town. With their escape routes cut off, the Russian army fell into chaos, soldiers fleeing in all directions. Many drowned in the river, others were killed or taken prisoner, and only a lucky few managed to escape the carnage. The battle ended in a catastrophic defeat for the Russians. The Prussians abandoned Königsberg, which was quickly occupied by the French. Meanwhile, Bennigsen's shattered army retreated into Russia. On June 19th, Tsar Alexander sent an envoy to negotiate peace with Napoleon. The talks commenced after the two emperors met on a raft on the river Niemen near Tilsit. Napoleon offered relatively lenient terms to Russia, requiring them to join the continental system and cede only the Ionian Islands. In contrast, Prussia faced harsh conditions, losing half its territory with the creation of the Kingdom of Westphalia and the Duchy of Warsaw. After the Treaty of Tilsit, Napoleon turned to enforcing the continental system. Portugal, allied with Britain, refused to comply, prompting Napoleon to invade. In November 1807, Franco-Spanish forces swiftly occupied Lisbon without a fight. The Portuguese royal family fled to Brazil.